Good evening and welcome to this live telephone town hall. We're dialing out to tens of thousands of homes in the New Jersey area, and on this telephone town hall tonight, we're going to be answering your questions live, including questions about the federal and state response to COVID-19 pandemic. Congressman Tom Malinowski will be joining us in just a moment, and also joining Representative Malinowski will be Commissioner Robert Asaro Angelo of the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce. I want to tell you how you can participate in tonight's telephone town hall before we bring them on. You can simply press 0 on your keypad at any time if you have a question. Press 0 on your keypad if you have a question. You will be placed in a queue, and our operators will then assist you in asking your question. Representative Malinowski was going to take as many questions as he possibly can tonight, time permitting. If you do have a question but don't want to go live, you can also let your operator know, and we can read the question for you, whatever is most comfortable for you. You can also press 7 at any time on your keypad to submit your email address to Congressman Malinowski so that you can get the latest from his office through email, including the latest on the COVID-19 pandemic. So please press 7 at any time to get on Representative Malinowski's email newsletter list. We've had some new friends and neighbors just join us, so I'm going to repeat myself and encourage all of you to wait just another minute for Congressman Malinowski, who will be here shortly with us on the line. I want to welcome you to this live telephone town hall. As we dial out to thousands of homes in your neighborhoods, we, on this telephone town hall tonight, will be answering your questions live. We're going to be taking your questions about the federal and state response to COVID-19. Our host for this evening is Congressman Tom Malinowski, and he'll be joining us in just a minute. He also has a special guest from the Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce. First, I want to tell you how you can participate in tonight's call. Simply press 0 if you have a question. Press 0 if you have a question at any time. If you do have a question, but you prefer not to go live, you can just let your operator know, and we will read the question for you. And finally, I'd encourage you to please press 7 on your keypad. Press 7 on your keypad to submit your email address to Representative Malinowski's office so they can keep you updated on the latest of COVID-19 and other important issues that come up. So you can press 7 at any point throughout the call. With that, Congressman, we have a great audience here, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for joining me today for this call. This is an extraordinary, difficult moment for our state, for the country, in fact, for the whole world. And I know that at this stage, with more than 2,400 deaths in New Jersey, none of us has been unaffected. I hope that everyone on this call is healthy. I hope everybody is safe, but I know this has been very difficult on all of us. We are isolated in our homes. Many people have lost work. Many businesses have shut their doors and are in a very, very precarious situation. And I know that this can be very, very frustrating, and the anxiety that many of you must feel right now. I do want everybody to understand that what we are doing, nonetheless, is working. We are, as much as it may feel isolating and alone to be in our homes, we are part of one of the most extraordinary collective efforts that the American people have ever undertaken against a common enemy. And we are showing signs of success. The purpose of this social distancing, as we've come to call it, remember, is not to kill this virus immediately. Nothing can do that. It is to slow the spread, the speed of transmission, so that our public health system, particularly our hospitals, can manage the problem and not be overwhelmed. And I've been looking at the statistics in New Jersey over the last several days, and it does look like we are beginning to do that. We are bending the curve. If you look at the number of people admitted to our hospitals, the number of people in intensive care, the number of people in critical care. The numbers have been holding pretty steady over the last week. They are still very high. We are still very close to capacity in our hospitals. Our healthcare workers are going through very difficult times personally right now. But the numbers are holding steady in a way that suggests that the social distancing that we're doing is working. So let's please keep it up until it is safe to begin to resume our normal lives. In the meantime, I also know that there is tremendous economic harm that has been caused by this epidemic, and Congress has been doing what we can to try to ease that harm, to make it economically possible for all of us to remain at home and to follow the advice of public health experts. We passed legislation a couple of weeks ago, the CARES Act, which provides direct cash payments to many millions of Americans, that provides forgivable loans to our small businesses if they retain their employees on payroll, and that extends and enhances unemployment insurance for those of us who have lost their jobs. I'm happy to take your questions today on any aspect of our response, whether the public health response, where we are trying to get more personal protective equipment to our hospitals, to our first responders. I have been personally working with our municipal governments and our counties, trying to get them the supplies that they need, whether it's our efforts to enhance testing for coronavirus. We now have drive-through testing in every county in my congressional district. We're just beginning in Somerset and Hunterdon County this week, or about the economic response, trying to make sure that we can survive this and our businesses can survive this whole. Our guest today will talk to us more about the latter part of that equation, the economic response. Joining me is New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development Commissioner Robert Asaro-Angelo. We know that record numbers of New Jerseyans have filed for unemployment in the last several weeks, and understanding that process is one of the top questions that my office has been getting from constituents. So we're really lucky to have the Commissioner with us tonight to take your questions, to share the latest updates on how his department is working to help us to weather this storm. So thank you for joining us, Commissioner, and I will hand it over to you, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you for doing this town hall. I really feel fortunate as a New Jerseyan to have so many in our delegation who have prior federal executive branch experience dealing with emergencies just like this. Routine, yourself, Congresswoman Cheryl, Congressman Kim, who served in the executive branch of the federal government like I once did. So thanks for giving this important forum to speak directly to New Jerseyans in your district. Over the prior few weeks, we saw more than 575,000 people in New Jersey apply for unemployment as a result of this public health emergency. While the results from last week are embargoed per BLS rules, I can assure you there is no slowdown, and the next release of data on Thursday will continue to be overwhelming. So while everything we're doing as New Jerseyans that you just spoke about with success regarding social distancing and closing of non-essential businesses is working to flatten the curve as to not overwhelm our health systems, these actions had the exact opposite effect on our unemployment system. The crush of layoffs and furloughs have overwhelmed state unemployment agencies nationwide, and New Jersey is no exception. We are seeing the volume of claims to our website and calls to our customer service centers exponentially higher than at any time in history. The first week of this crisis saw a 1,600% increase in volume, 1,600% in a single week. Now, hopefully the work that the SBA and the New Jersey Economic Development Authority are doing will help support New Jersey businesses so they can keep their workers employed. But while the unemployment numbers are stark, we do have hundreds of New Jersey employers who are currently hiring. My department, along with the NJEDA and the Governor's Office of Innovation, stood up a dynamic, continuously updating jobs portal at jobs.covid19.nj.gov, which has live updating numbers, which I'm going to check right now. Currently has 50,102 jobs available on there across the state from close to 1,000 employers. And you can go on there and filter by industry, occupation, and geography as well. We're also thrilled that with the help of Congressman Malinowski and his colleagues, that will really help boost New Jersey families with their work of passing the CARES Act, which provided for an additional $600 per week for unemployment claimants, extended benefits for those who might have previously exhausted benefits, and new benefits for folks who normally would be ineligible, such as independent contractors and self-employed. We're currently working to bring into our systems more of your calls and emails, which is our number one priority. We hear it from family members, friends, neighbors, friends of friends, all making similar pleas for help as this pandemic has impacted everyone. As one New Jersey family, we've been affected together, and I'm confident we'll get through it together. I know unemployment in general is a negative thing, and we wish that nobody had to file, but I also have to say that the whole point of having unemployment insurance is exactly for moments like this. New Jerseyans and their employers have been paying into our trust fund, and now it is here for you. While I know our system is working, as we've made payments to 300,000 New Jerseyans this past week, that is of little consequence if your claim isn't one of them. I just want to assure everybody that no matter when you get your filing through or when you get your payments, you will get every single penny you are eligible for backdated to your last date of employment. Our entire staff empathizes with your frustration and uncertainty, which is why we've been working around the clock to find solutions to common problems weighing on the system. We've moved aggressively, making big strides even over the past few days and even today as we speak. The first batch of supplemental unemployment payments, the $600, will go into claimants' pockets starting late tonight and tomorrow. We processed the big batch up to the banks on Friday, so folks who got their regular unemployment claim payment last week will see that additional $600 either tonight or tomorrow, depending on if you have direct deposit or a bank card. So some 260,000 residents are seeing this money for a total of $164 million in additional payouts. More than 130,000 claimants who are waiting for an agent to review their unemployment application have had their claim processed thanks to updated IT programming. This enabled these applicants to receive a quick determination of their eligibility instead of having to wait to call through our overburdened phone lines. Going forward, more than 60% of claims formally requiring an agent review will be entered directly into the mainframe as a result of the significant upgrade. Hundreds of laptops have been delivered and configured, and hundreds more are arriving this week, allowing more than 500 additional staff to work from home, which will speed processing time for claims requiring agent review. A document explaining the benefits process for independent contractors and freelancers will be posted on our website tomorrow, guiding this group through the process to collect their pandemic unemployment assistance payments as soon as possible. This will also reduce a significant volume of phone and email inquiries, freeing up those agents to deal with other claimants' problems. A new customer service mailbox will be live tomorrow as well, which will allow us to reply to backed up emails with an online tool to capture the exact nature of an applicant's issue and prompt them to supply the relevant information so we can resolve it quickly on the back end to relieve stress for customers who have been unsuccessful getting through on the phone or have been waiting for an email reply. And now, this past Wednesday, the capacity of our call centers was expanded to provide additional inquiry lines to eliminate hang-ups. Prior to this upgrade, tens of thousands of callers are met every day with dead air or just being hung up on, which I know was soul-crushing for many, quite frankly, because the system was beyond its capacity. This is no longer happening, and more callers are able to provide their information over the phone. We have other upgrades in the process, but just know that we are working every day, every minute, to bring these programs online and to serve more and more customers as possible in as expeditious a manner as possible. So thank you for your support, Congressman. Thank you for giving us this forum.
Thank you very much.
Folks, we are ready to take some live questions here. Before we do that, I just want to remind all of you that you can press 0 at any time if you have a question during this call. Press 0 if you have a question. You can also please press 7, and we'd encourage you to press 7 so that you can get email updates on COVID-19 and other important issues that are coming through Congressman Malinowski's office. so please press 7 on your keypad. We will take our first call. This is Mary from Bridgewater. Mary, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, hi. I would like to know when the Branchburg test site will be open, and also will they offer the new saliva test? And one more question about unemployment. I would like to know how the $600 a week extra will be deposited into the unemployment. Is it a separate filing, or will it automatically add on to what you're already receiving? Thank you.
Thanks. Let me take the first part of that. The drive-through test site in Branchburg, which will serve residents of Somerset and Hunterdon counties, is scheduled to open on Thursday morning. And you asked about the new saliva test. This is a new test that Rutgers University has developed, a new methodology. It's much better. It will get the result, they've told me, in as little as 2 hours, and it's less intrusive. It's just, spitting into a vial. It was just approved by the FDA today, so I am not certain that it can be deployed at our drive-through test sites as early as this week. But I was on the phone with the Department of Health today on just that very question. I am going to do everything I can, working with Rutgers, with the governor's office, to try to make sure that that test is deployed to as many folks in our district as quickly as possible.
On the unemployment side, the $600 will be in a separate payment, and it will go through whatever regular method you get to get your usual unemployment. So if you have a direct deposit set up, it'll be the $600 will come in as a separate payment a few days after your regular UI payment. And if you have the bank card, it'll go onto the bank card a few days after your regular UI payment goes on there.
Thank you very much. Our next caller is Andrew from Summit, and he asked for his question to be read. He's wondering what is going on with the post office. Are they going under, and what's their status? Congressman Malinowski, please.
Sure. The post office is very much in financial trouble right now. I do not believe this is in any way the fault of the post office itself. Many people don't know that the post office receives no subsidies from taxpayers. It is self-supporting, and it would be financially in pretty good shape right now if not for a law that Congress passed about 15 years ago that requires it to front-load the payment of its employees' pensions through the year 2050 or so, which no big private company in America has to do that. So they've been coming to us asking for relief. The House of Representatives proposed in the last coronavirus bill, in the CARES Act, to give them that relief. We think it is particularly important to do so now when we are all confined to our homes and depending on deliveries more than we do under normal circumstances. We need the post office. We need to take care of our postal workers who are essential workers. They are taking risks to be doing their jobs right now. And by the way, we need the post office to deliver our votes by mail if we have an election in which more of our fellow Americans have to stay home because of this epidemic. So we're pushing very, very hard in the House to try to deliver some relief to the post office and to free them from what we think is an extraordinary and excessive obligation to fund these pensions through or beyond the year 2050.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question is for you, Commissioner Asaro Angelo. This is Peter from Mountainside. Peter, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, thank you. I filed for unemployment on the 15th of March, and I've been making my weekly claims subsequently. I've not received any monies as of earlier today, and just wanted to know what I can do to inquire as to what the delay is, or is the process by the end of this week? Is it everything gonna work out?
Thank you for your question, and I'm sorry going through that. It's really hard to give an answer on an individual claim. There could be dozens of reasons why. I don't know if this is the best forum for back and forth, but I do know that tomorrow or the next day we're going to have a much better interactive email inquiry system online. And I'm sure if you call the Congressman's office to get in touch with us, we'll be able to check out your claim. But there could be multiple reasons. It might be there's so many even to list. It could be something with an out-of-state employer. It could be you had a different filing before. But if you're certifying weekly without getting a message about why it's not going through, that sort of puzzles me a little bit.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Our next question comes from Ruth in White House Station, and Congressman Malinowski, this question's for you. Ruth, please go ahead with your question.
Congressman, I have a question in regard to the stimulus payments. I did file a 2018 federal income tax return. I didn't have a refund coming to me, so there was no bank routing number or bank account numbers on my income tax return. And I believe are they supposed to be starting some of those stimulus payments? Did they start today? And I assume, from what I've heard, I think those who had direct deposit information were getting those, like whether they started today. How is the federal government going to, or is there something I need to do, or how is the federal government going to get the stimulus payment to me if they don't have a bank routing number and a bank account number for me?
Thanks for the question. So yes, indeed, the stimulus payments are supposed to start going out today, and the first batch is going to people for whom they have that bank routing number from a previous tax return. So if you're not in that category, here are a couple of things that you can do. One is you can file your 2019 tax return now, even though the deadline has been extended. That you could, if you chose, file a simple tax return now. You could even revise it later on, but you could file it now just to give them that routing number. Number two, they are supposed to be setting up a website this week. They say this week. We'll have to see what the IRS does, for the purpose of allowing you to both track your stimulus payment to figure out where it is in the system, when it's coming, and to give them that direct deposit information. So the quickest thing you can do is to just file a simple 2019 tax return, revise it later if you need, and give it to them that way. Second option, wait until they stand up that website, which will allow you to do it directly as well. And if you don't do any of those things, you'll still get a check if you qualify based on your income. It'll just be mailed to you, and you probably won't get it until early May.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Our next question comes for you, Commissioner. This is Linda from Union. Linda, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, Commissioner, and thank you so much, guys, for taking everybody's call. We really appreciate the fact that you guys are really in touch with the people of New Jersey, so thank you very much. So I filed for unemployment 2 weeks ago, and this is the message that I'm getting. Pending claims take up to 7 days to process. Information is updated nightly. This has been going on for 2 weeks. I can't get any answers. I don't know if I'm supposed to apply every week or wait till this pending thing clears up. So that's my first question. Unfortunately, I don't have any money to pay for my health insurance, so I haven't paid that, and I wanted to see if you guys in New Jersey would reopen up the Obamacare like New York did, so people can reapply for health insurance. And then my last question is, I have SLS mortgage company, and they are not pushing out my mortgage. They're doing a forbearance, which means I have to come up with 3 months money at the end of the 90-day grace period. They're not putting it on the back end of the mortgage. And I wanted to see, if there's any way that you guys can give them a call and, put some pressure on this mortgage company to, do what Bank of America is doing, which is pushing the mortgage out on the back end of the mortgage. But the unemployment is just horrendous, and I'm so disappointed that we didn't let the government jump on the horn and take this over like Trump was suggesting it, because to put everybody in this position where I'm on the computer every night checking my pending claim and I'm not hearing anything back. So I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing if I'm supposed to be filing every week. It just says pending.
I'll take the parts that I can take, and Lynn, that's wants to apologize that you're in this situation. It's not easy for anybody, but just to be clear, even before the pandemic, if you filed one day, you usually don't get your payment for between 2 to 3 weeks after that when you go through the process. About half of our claims that come through go through cleanly and easily without any problem. Again, that's no solace for the half that aren't, that need agent intervention. When you have a message that says pending, it means you need agent intervention. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we sent out emails to about 130,000 people over the past week saying basically unpending that claim. There could be lots of reasons why a claim is pending. You might not have met the income threshold to have enough base weeks of unemployment to be eligible. You might be an independent contractor or self-employed who formerly would not be eligible. There might be some other issues with your filing. It's amazing. You would be surprised how many folks apply, go through the process, and there's some, a missed syllable, a missed character somewhere that didn't match up with what your employer had put down for you, or you put a different date that your employer told us that you had separated from work, is what happens a lot. But as far as the pending, there's nothing else you need to do. Our folks are working behind the scenes on all claims that are pending. That is pretty much what every agent is working on, is fixing the pending claims, and you'll get an email notification when that is fixed. But again, you're on the regular timeline for unemployment payment as it would before the pandemic. The other two questions are not my wheelhouse, but I think I'm going to take a stab at the healthcare one. I know that the governor and Department of Banking and Insurance done everything they can through the state exchange, but New Jersey is transitioning from a federal exchange to a state exchange. I'm sure the congressman can correct me on my verbiage there, that we don't have the full power over our exchange like New York did. And on the mortgage company, I know the governor's also asked, or maybe did an executive order on mortgage payment forbearance. But I'll let the congressman.
I can take that. Yeah. So on the mortgage payments, Governor Murphy did strike a deal with the major banks and mortgage companies to give everybody a 90-day, 3-month grace period. So that's in place right now, and different banks and mortgage companies are handling it in slightly different ways. What we want them to do, what they should do, is to tack those 3 months onto the end of your mortgage. So you just get a 90-day grace period, and then you can start paying again after that. A couple of them are handling it differently, and that's something that we are looking into, but you do get that 90-day grace period. On health insurance, it's correct. We don't have 100% control over our state exchange. We have asked the Trump administration to create a special open enrollment period for New Jersey, and so far President Trump has refused to do that. We continue to call for it. I will say, though, that if you have lost your job, then you do qualify for Affordable Care Act enrollment. That is considered a special life event if you've just lost your job. So you should be able to, if you're in that category, to apply for coverage under the Affordable Care Act and the subsidies at any time in the year.
Our next caller is Charmaine from Berkeley Heights. And Congressman, this question is for you. Charmaine, please go ahead with your question.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. I have two questions. The first one, I've been unemployed for a while, and I exhausted my benefits. So the extension came through, and I'm wondering why I applied for it and I haven't been able to get through. I even went down to the office today, which was closed. Is there any way that you should not have to wait to speak to someone when you was previously approved for unemployment and to get the extension automatically? That's my first question. And the second one, I'm just piggybacking on the reopening of the New Jersey Affordable Care Act, Obamacare,
Sure.
for us that are unemployed.
I think I would ask the commissioner to take the unemployment insurance question.
Yep. So unfortunately, federal and state law is not fun and easy sometimes. And while our unemployment is administered by the state, it is a federal program. And the federal government didn't release the rules for the extension until, I believe, Friday. So we're working through those rules now. Our hope is that you won't have to do anything else. If you were an exhaustee, you exhausted your benefits over the past year, you will get an email or a phone call from us alerting you to your new benefits. We are not sure yet whether or not you will need to reapply or not. Let's go be upfront with that. We are hoping that we'll be able to do it within the USDOL parameters that folks who exhausted or who are about to exhaust will not have to reapply, but there'll have to be some kind of certification you may have to do. But we're going to be working furiously over the next week or so to reach back out to folks who have exhausted who might be eligible for this expansion.
Yeah, and on the Obamacare question, I guess it's the same answer. We have asked the Trump administration for a special enrollment period. So far, they have said no. I'm very disappointed in that. We will continue to ask for it.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Hugh in Union. And Congressman, this question is for you. Hugh, please go ahead with your question.
Congressman, I understand that the CARE Act, including a modification of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act relating to businesses' net operating loss carrybacks. With that precedent, I think that the Speaker wants to have the SALT cap modified in connection with a future legislation. I was wondering if any of your staff has passed on an article by my colleague from the Coalition for a Prosperous America. The title was, "The Last Time Congress Pulled Off a Major Tax Code Overhaul, It Triggered a Financial Disaster." The subject matter of this article was that as a result of the 1986 Act, it put pressure on savings and loans and mortgage companies, and we had the savings and loan crisis. And my colleague pointed out that the same could happen because of the SALT cap. And I figured between the precedent that was set in the CARE Act and this potential financial crisis on top of COVID-19 would give you more ammunition in connection with a SALT cap solution.
Thank you for that, and I hope the answer is yes. We needed a SALT cap solution prior to this epidemic. We have always, ever since there has been an income tax in America, since the Civil War, we have been able to deduct our state and local taxes from our federal income tax returns until 2017, when Congress took that away. It hurt New Jersey very badly, and I think it was intended to hurt New Jersey. I've been fighting to get the full deductibility of our state and local taxes back since the day I was elected. In December of last year, I helped to get a bill through the House to restore the SALT deduction. It is stuck in the Senate, unfortunately. In this crisis that we're in, we have asked once again for relief from the SALT cap. I have been pushing for that with other members of the New Jersey delegation. As you noted, Speaker Pelosi has endorsed that idea, and we will try to get it into one of the next coronavirus bills. I don't want to deceive you. There's still a lot of opposition in the Senate from Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. So it is not an easy lift, but I think the argument for it is even stronger at a moment when we need to get money into the hands of middle-class folks in New Jersey and across the country.
Thank you very much. Next up is Sandra from Milburn, and Sandra has a question for Commissioner Asaro Angelo. Go ahead, Sandra.
Hi there. I actually have three questions, and one's for the commissioner. I think the other two are probably for the congressman. My question for the commissioner is about the unemployment for independent contractors. So are you saying that what I've applied for through the portal or online is not available if I'm an independent contractor, that there's still something that is going to be available, and that I incorrectly applied for something I'm not eligible for? My second question is about the SBA loan. My husband put in his application on March 31st, and he just called to follow up today, and after spending at least an hour and a half on hold, he finally got somebody, and they said that there are so many people in front of him, his application has not even made it to anybody's desk yet. And he applied like minutes after it was passed. And my third question is about the insurance, is a question for Tom, about insurance, business interruption insurance for small businesses, for any business. I guess Trump must have it for his businesses as well, because he was singing the praises and encouraging them these insurance companies to pay. I was wondering if you have that as part of your next, I guess, stimulus or your next bill, if it's something that you guys are considering.
You want to go first? Sure. I think, Sandra, thank you for the question. No, you didn't do anything wrong, number one. It sounds weird, but the first step to get the assistance for independent contractors and self-employed is, in fact, to apply for regular unemployment and be denied. While it's called pandemic unemployment assistance, when you think about a regular unemployment insurance system, somebody maybe like yourself who's an independent contractor or self-employed, you weren't employed in the first place in the traditional sense. You weren't a W-2 wage earner, which our system is built upon, and you haven't paid premiums into the unemployment insurance system. So this new system is something that's going to be based on your records from 1099s or whatever other kind of tax forms you have, or other kinds of wage records. But per US DOL federal regulations, you're not eligible for that until you get denied from our unemployment system. So you've taken the proper first step. What I was mentioning before, that we're going to have a better explainer on this on the website tomorrow. But with that explainer, an email will go out to everybody who has applied and was denied for not having W-2 earnings. So you'll be getting an email information about that either tomorrow or Wednesday. But you have, in a way, you've moved along in the process already. So you've taken that first step of applying and being denied, which is a prerequisite to get the assistance for the self-employed and independent contractors.
And then on the small business loan, could I ask you, did he apply for the payroll protection loan, the forgivable loan, or for the emergency, the disaster loan? Sorry.
It's the disaster loan that he applies for.
Yeah.
Oh, he did both. I'm sorry, both of them. Both of them.
He did both? Okay. And which bank?
Which one? Signature Bank.
Do you know which Signature? Okay.
Yeah.
So two different programs, and they're both problematic right now. The the disaster loan is an SBA program. SBA was never set up to do anything of this magnitude, and they are overwhelmed. And there's not enough money in that disaster loan system to come close to meeting the need. The Payroll Protection Act, Payroll Protection Program loans are actually much more attractive for most people, for anyone who can qualify for them, because the loan is forgivable. It's free money as long as you retain your employees in your business. And that is done through banks. So that's why I asked which bank. And different banks have been implementing it in different ways. We gave them basically a few days to figure out how to distribute $350 billion. And as you can imagine, it's been incredibly chaotic. The federal government has been putting out guidance every day to the banks to try to improve the process. We are hopefully in the next few days going to pass another bill in the House to add money to the program, which will give the banks more confidence to start getting money out faster. But I don't want to sugarcoat it. This is not as smooth as we intended. Some of the banks are imposing requirements that really they shouldn't be imposing, only dealing with people who have existing loans with them. That is not what we intended. This is there for everybody. There are some alternatives coming online. PayPal, for example. You may want to look into that. And if you'd like to leave us your contact information, you can do that in a voicemail if you just stay on the line after this call. We can have a staff person get back to you and see if there's any specific intervention we can make for you guys.
Thank you very much. We'll take our next question. This is Mark for you, Congressman. Mark is calling from Glen Gardner. Mark, please go ahead.
Hello. I'm a little concerned that this crisis will not be fully over in November. And beyond our president's authoritarian leanings, I'm also concerned by what I've seen in some of the states. In particular, in Wisconsin, the Republican legislature decided to have people risk their lives in order to vote. And they reduced the number of polling places in urban areas from 160 to 5. And I'm concerned that they'll do something similar to that. And the Supreme Court, by the way, supported them in doing this. And I'm concerned that something like this will happen in November. And I feel like we need legislation in order to protect our election, to codify that there will be an election, and that people should have a right to vote by mail with a reasonable amount of time to do so in all 50 states. And I know that there's standalone legislation to provide for this, but I also know that it's going to sit on McConnell's desk. So unless some legislation to protect our election is tied to some emergency legislation, I'm afraid that our election will be unprotected. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I totally agree with you. Number one, there will be an election. The general election date is set by Congress. We've had an election no matter the crisis in American history. We had elections, national elections during the Civil War. We had national elections during World War II. We're going to have an election in November. Can't be postponed. It's not like the baseball season or a rock concert. It's going to happen. The only question is how and whether it's credible, whether both sides feel at the end of the day that everybody has had a fair chance to cast their ballot. And nobody in America should ever be forced to choose between exercising their right to vote and their right to life. What happened in Wisconsin was outrageous and should not happen in any state in this country. I led an effort in the House. I got about 60 of my fellow House members on a letter to our leadership to try to get in the last coronavirus bill a provision that mandated that every state in the country offer what New Jersey offers, which is the opportunity for everybody to vote by mail. And we asked for money to help states make that transition, the ones that need to. That went over to the Senate, and we ended up with some of the money, but not the mandate, not the requirement. So in the wake of Wisconsin, we're going to keep trying. This shouldn't be a Democrat or Republican issue. If this epidemic comes back in force in the fall, which is possible, this is going to affect Republican voters as well as Democratic voters. Everybody's going to be in the same boat, and nobody should be put in that position ever again in our country.
Thank you very much. Our next question is from Trudy in Westfield, and Commissioner, this is for you. Go ahead, Trudy, please.
Yes, good evening. Most of my question has been answered. Thank you very much. I was wondering about the $600 and when that additional unemployment was going to start. What I didn't hear, and perhaps I got disconnected for a few minutes, is about retroactive and how far back you will go with the $600, and will that all be in the first check?
Yes, so the $600, thank you for your question, Trudy. The $600 went into effect right after, I think, the bill was signed 2 Fridays ago. That next day, Saturday, was like a big rush to get documents signed, basically a contract with the U.S. Department of Labor, so it would be in effect that following week. So the week of March, the week that began March 29th was the first week that $600 was in effect. So, yeah, the $600 is retroactive to that point in time, to that week. So if you're getting paid for that week, you will get the additional $600 for that week and every week going forward till the last week of July. There's been some confusion because the other parts of the CARES Act, like the expansion of benefits, the additional weeks, and the expansion for independent contractors, is retroactive further back into January, but the $600 doesn't start until that week of March 29th. And it's automatic. It'll be a separate payment into your unemployment benefits, usually a few days after your regular unemployment benefit.
Thank you very much. We also had another question come in that asked to be read, and that question is, employment in New Jersey currently runs out after 26 weeks, but the federal government has extended unemployment eligibility to 39 weeks due to the COVID-19 crisis. What do people have to do to get their extra 13 weeks? Can you answer that, Commissioner?
Yeah, I touched on this a little bit before. Our hope is, and we're still working with the U.S. Department of Labor on the guidelines for this extension to for the additional 13 weeks. Hopefully you won't have to do anything, but if you've already exhausted your benefits and now will be eligible for these new 13 weeks, you will hear from us. And if you're currently collecting and you'll be looking to add weeks to the end, you'll also hear from us about how to make that happen. Our hope is that we're allowed to do this without having to have anybody refile, but we're waiting for further word from the U.S. Department of Labor. But either way, you will get every penny that you're eligible for those weeks.
Thanks. That's great news to a lot of people. Appreciate that, Commissioner. Folks, this is your last call. If you'd like to submit your email address to get the latest COVID-19 updates, then please press 7 on your keypad. Press 7 on your keypad, and you'll get the latest through email from Congressman Malinowski's office. We'll take our next question. This is Alex from Short Hills, and this question is for you, Congressman. Go ahead, Alex.
Hi, good afternoon, Congressman. My name is Alex, and I have a question for Mr. Malinowski. Is it appropriate to open an investigation into Trump's handling of coronavirus? And given that hundreds of thousands of Americans are now being infected by this coronavirus, they must also pay their health care bills. Would you support sending a single-payer health care plan to Congress?
So thank you, Alex, for that question. First of all, we've already established in legislation the testing for coronavirus is free, and the House has been pushing, and we had in our version of the CARES Act a provision that any treatment related to coronavirus should be free for any American. The administration countered with something that basically said that, well, hospitals won't charge and they'll be reimbursed at Medicare rates, which sounded a bit like Medicare for all. It was quite interesting. So I think the initial thing we got to do is make sure that cost is not a bar for anybody to get treatment. It's not a bar for anyone to get a vaccine, not a bar for anyone to get a test. That's a moral imperative, but it's also a public health imperative for all of us, because none of us are going to be safe unless every American has access to the care they need in this epidemic. Beyond that, I totally agree that this crisis has exposed a lot of the problems that existed in our healthcare system, some of the inequities that we have long lived with. We've been debating the best way to solve that. I believe in universal health care. I think it's a crime that anybody is uninsured in our country. The question is the best way to get there. What I've been for, and I'll continue to fight for, is that every American should have the freedom to buy into a public system like Medicare. I believe you give people the freedom to make that choice, and many Americans will do so. Those Americans who are happy with the health insurance they have, whether it's a private health insurance plan or something provided by their union, get to keep that, and we'll have more competition in the marketplace, more competitive prices for everybody, and our system could evolve in one direction or another, but by freedom of choice, not by government imposition. So that's where I hope we'll go. I think this crisis creates more, certainly adds to the argument for some fundamental change, and I look forward to that debate going forward.
Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Ross, and Commissioner, this question is from you. Ross in Branford, please go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. My question is, I am 75 years old, cannot live on Social Security, so I worked the regular job. I went into work on a Monday morning. I worked 2 hours, thought I was having a heart attack, went to the hospital. I've been out of work now for almost 4 weeks with the coronavirus. I've tried calling unemployment. I've tried on the computer. I've been in contact with the hospital because they call me every 3 days to see how I'm doing. And am I eligible for the $600? And what do I have to do to get, to have it available to me?
Hey, Ross, I'm sorry for the situation you're in. A few things. One, if you are out of work because of illness, one, you're entitled by law in New Jersey for 40 hours of paid sick leave at your regular rate of pay. On top of that, Congressman and his colleagues passed the Families First Coronavirus Response Act 3 weeks ago, which it mandates for you an additional 2 weeks of paid sick time. So that's 3 weeks right there that your employer is mandated by law to pay you. On top of that, it's hard to talk about individual unemployment filings, but if you are found eligible for UI, you will get the $600 per week additional to your regular benefits starting that week of March 29th. So if your filing hasn't gone through yet, whenever it does process, you will get that money backdated to that week.
Ross, if I could suggest, if you're willing, stay on the line after the call, and when you get to the voicemail, if you're willing to leave us some contact info, we'll reach out to you and see if we can help you take advantage of some of those options. I think the best of those options is sick leave. That should be, there may be some differences depending on the nature of your employer, but that would be the best option, I think, and let's see if we can figure that out together.
Our next caller is Martin from Morris County, and Martin's question is for you, Congressman. Go ahead, Martin.
Hi, Congressman. On behalf of my fellow physicians and healthcare colleagues working and dealing with this unprecedented onslaught at the hospitals and in our offices, we certainly applaud what's so far taken place with Congress and the administration, but I'm concerned with the fact that we still are lacking some of our basic and essential medical supplies, especially for patients with comorbid conditions, the most vulnerable people, IV lines, IV fluids, central lines, medications, and also the lack of reusable personal protective equipment. And we really need, I think, Congress to step in and somehow take over what's been going on. The other piece of this is I'm glad to hear that more testing will be available, and I also want to say that we're nowhere near the end of this. Community health centers have not been fully funded this year. Hospitals money is drying up. Physicians are going to be affected in many ways with PTSD following this crisis. They've never been in any kind of situation like this before, where you wake up in the morning and you know what you're going to be dealing with because you did it the day before. And the day in and day out of dealing with this is extremely difficult. We're going to have to support them in some ways that we've never done before. Physicians and other healthcare workers will not be able to do what they've been doing prior to what is going on now. Somehow Congress, I believe, needs to step in. And as I said, once we are somewhat out of the woods, community health centers and hospitals are going to need the money too. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And first of all, thank you for what you're doing. There are, I think, several thousand people on this phone call who are grateful beyond words for what our frontline medical workers are doing and going through right now. I think it's probably hard for most of us to put ourselves in your shoes because we don't experience it, but we do hear the stories, and we know that we owe you everything right now. And so what can we do? Congress is doing what I would call the easiest part, which is providing money. And we did one appropriation a couple of weeks ago of over $100 billion to help our hospitals and community health centers. Some of that money is already coming to New Jersey, but not enough. We're working on fixing some of the inequities in which states get what money, and I think we're succeeding in doing that, so there should be considerably more coming to New Jersey over the next couple of weeks, and we are now insisting on new legislation that will significantly increase what we have already provided. Now, there are some things that money can't buy, not alone. One thing is, well, you can buy personal protective equipment, but not if there is a shortage of it, not if it doesn't exist. I spent the last week, among other things, working to try to get some N95 masks for the test center that we are setting up in Somerset and Hunterdon County. And we got them, but I got to say that it's ridiculous that a member of Congress like me should have to do that. I'm not an expert in medical supply chains. And yet the shortages are so great that all of us, our municipal governments, our county governments, our members of Congress are scrounging to try to find this stuff, trying to figure out, who's offering it and whether the offers are real. And it has really exposed failings in our national supply system. So we are pressing, we have been pressing the President to use his powers under a law called the Defense Production Act to basically take over the national supply chain for the medical equipment that's needed to deal with this crisis. Everything from ventilators to the simplest things like masks and gloves and gowns that are in short supply. We are finally now having the federal government place bulk orders with companies like 3M, for example, and actually ordering them to produce for the national market. But it's a little bit late. We should have been doing this in January and February when we knew that this crisis was around the corner. I'm also trying to fix the system for the long term. We have a strategic national stockpile of medical supplies and equipment for crises like this, and it was never funded as well as it should have been. I'm introducing legislation this week to try to fix that problem for future crises so that we always have sufficient supplies in that stockpile to meet a global pandemic.